Good morning. So till date, we have covered your anatomy and physiology. Okay, conjunctiva is covered, cataract is covered, okay, and refractive errors and optics of eye has been covered. Okay, now we will start with uveitis. So okay, so what is uveitis? It is an inflammation of uveal tract. Itis is inflammation, you know it. So what is uveal tract? What are the components of uveal tract? So iris, ciliary body, and choroids are the part of uveal tract. Anteriorly, iris and ciliary body are part of uveal tract, while posteriorly choroid is a part of ciliary uveal tract. Hmm? And common to all these structures that they all these structures are highly vascularized. So chances of inflammation are more. Okay, so you can see a picture. Anteriorly, iris and ciliary body. These are body are the part of uveal tract, while posteriorly choroid is a part of uveal tract. And all these structures are highly vascularized. Okay. If you see the epidemiology of uveitis, there are 15 cases per 1 lakh population occurs each year. Okay. And it is responsible for 10% cases of blindness. Okay. The third leading cause of blindness in developed countries. Huh? If you see the age wise incidence, the highest cases are seen in old age patients. Okay, that is more than 65 years. Okay, gender wise it is more common in females. All inflammatory diseases, okay, connective tissue disorders, all these diseases are more common in females. Okay, again, anti-uveitis is the most common. There are different scheme of classification depending upon the anatomy, depending upon the etiology. Okay, in that entry uveitis is the most common uveitis. Okay, so classification of uveitis. So uveitis can be classified on the basis of different modes. Okay, so there is anatomical classification, clinical classification is there, pathological classification is there, and etiological classification is there. We will see one by one. So anatomical classification, it is divided into again anterior uveitis, intermediate uveitis, posterior uveitis, and panuveitis. When the anterior part of the uveal tract are involved, it is anterior uveitis. So anterior uveitis is again divided into, so anterior uveal tract consists of iris and ciliary body. So inflammation of iris or ciliary body is anterior uveitis. So it is again divided into iritis, cyclitis, and iridocyclitis. Iritis is inflammation of the iris. Cyclitis is inflammation of the ciliary body. And iridocyclitis is the inflammation of both iris and the ciliary body. And the most of the times, inflammation of both iris and the ciliary body occurs. Intermediate uveitis, and the intermediate part of the uveal tract is involved. An intermediate part of the uveal tract consists of pars planitis, that is the posteriormost part of the ciliary body, and the anteriormost part of the retina. Okay, ciliary body is divided into two parts. Anteriorly, it is called pars placata. Huh? There are plications. Okay, and posteriorly the smooth part is there, and it is called pars plana. So inflammation of pars plana is called intermediate uveitis or pars planitis. Okay, posterior uveitis, it is inflammation of the posterior part of the uveal tract, and posterior part of uveal tract is choroid. So inflammation of the choroid is posterior uveitis, and it is always associated with some inflammation of the retina. So isolated choroiditis is less common. So it is usually retino or the chorioretinitis. Okay, panuveitis, it is inflammation of whole of the uvea. Both anterior part of the uveal tract is involved, as also posterior part is also involved. Okay, anatomical classification, here you can see in red it is anterior uveitis, in blue it is intermediate uveitis, while in green it is choroid, so it is posterior uveitis. Okay, there is clinical classification, it is divided again into acute uveitis and chronic uveitis. Acute, as the name suggests, it is sudden in onset, patient is symptomatic, and it usually lasts for 6 weeks or more sometimes. Chronic uveitis, onset is slow, that is insidious, patient is most of the time asymptomatic or mildly symptomatic, and it lasts for more than 3 months. Okay, another classification system is pathological classification. Depending on the pathology, pathological observations. Okay, so it is divided into granulomatous uveitis and non-granulomatous uveitis. Okay, etiological classification depending upon the etiology of uveitis. It is divided into infective uveitis, allergic uveitis, toxic uveitis, idiopathic uveitis, and uveitis associated with systemic disease. We will see one by one. So infective uveitis. Infective uveitis can be bacterial, viral, protozoal, or fungal. Hmm? Common bacteria causing infective uveitis are syphilis, ठीक है, tuberculosis, and propionibacterium. Viruses: herpes simplex virus, varicella zoster virus, protozoa like toxoplasmosis, toxocariasis may cause uveitis, and fungal. Common is candida. So all of these are infective uveitis, causes of infective uveitis. Okay. Uveitis associated with systemic diseases. So uveitis is commonly associated with systemic diseases. There are n number of systemic diseases in which one of the manifestation of this disease is anterior uveitis or the posterior uveitis. Okay, so diseases associated with HLA-B27, ठीक, are associated with uveitis. So HLA-B27 associated systemic diseases: psoriatic arthropathy, disease, ulcerative colitis, ankylosing spondylitis, Ritter syndrome. In all these conditions, uveitis is also associated with it. Okay, sarcoidosis is there, Behcet disease, juvenile idiopathic arthritis, collagen vascular disease like Wegener granulomatosis, polyarthritis nodosa. So all these in all these systemic diseases, uveitis is also is seen. Okay, so etiopathogenesis or the etiopathogenesis. So etiopathogenesis is divided into again non-granulomatous pathogenesis of granulomatous uveitis is different and non-granulomatous uveitis is different. So we'll see first non-granulomatous uveitis. As I have told you, non-granulomatous uveitis is acute in onset and it is simulates your acute inflammation. Okay, it is generally acute in origin. And what are the pathological uh, changes that are seen in this non-granulomatous uveitis are: there is dilatation and increase in the permeability of vessels, breakdown of blood aqueous barrier, and infiltration of lymphocyte, plasma cell, and large macrophages of uveitis tissue. So all these are the pathological changes that occurs in non-granulomatous uveitis. And as a consequences of this uh, increased permeability, hmm, there is mobility of these structures, specifically of iris is reduced. Pupils become small. Why it is become small? As the iris, due to inflammation, it becomes boggy, and also because of the inflammatory materials, there is irritation of sphincter pupillae muscle, and because of the irritation of sphincter pupillae muscle, it is meiosis or the constriction of the pupil that is seen in acute uveitis. Okay. Granulomatous uveitis. As I have told you, there is formation of granuloma. So it indicates a chronic nature. So onset is insidious, slow. Okay. Most of the time, patient is asymptomatic, and again it is characterized by infiltration with lymphocyte, mainly lymphocyte, and there is proliferation of large mononuclear cells which aggregate into nodules. So there is formation of nodule in granulomatous uveitis. Okay. And along with this chronic inflammation, also there is necrosis of adjacent structure leading to a reparative process resulting in fibrosis, gliosis of the involved area. Okay, so there is formation of nodule, fibrosis, and the gliosis. These are the specific features of granulomatous uveitis. Okay, so we will see differences between granulomatous uveitis and non-granulomatous uveitis. It is very important. Okay, because the management differs in both these types. Okay. So onset in granulomatous uveitis is slow, that is insidious, and it follows a chronic course. While in non-granulomatous uveitis, onset is slow. Onset is acute, and patient is mainly symptomatic. Okay. Pain, mild pain in granulomatous uveitis, while pain is marked in non-granulomatous uveitis. Photophobia, slight in granulomatous uveitis. What is it? While in non-granulomatous uveitis, it is marked. Ciliary congestion, again marked in non-granulomatous uveitis. Keratic precipitate, very important feature. Mutton fat type of capes are seen in granulomatous uveitis. Remember, while fine small capes are seen in non-granulomatous uveitis. Aqueous flare, it is mild. Aqueous flare means, aqueous flare is seen in the aqueous humor. So because of breakdown in the blood aqueous barrier, proteins and the inflammatory cells, that all these are poured into aqueous. So depending upon the density or the number of inflammatory cells or proteins, aqueous flare is again divided into different grades. So aqueous flare is mild, so cells in the anterior chamber are few or less in granulomatous uveitis, while in non-granulomatous uveitis there is intense flare. Inflammatory cells are more, hmm? Protein particles in aqueous are more, and often there is heavy fibrinous exudate. Okay, in case of non-granulomatous uveitis. Okay, iris nodule, again a feature of granulomatous uveitis, as I have told you. So granulomatous inflammation, there is formation of nodule. Okay, so in non-granulomatous uveitis nodules are absent. Posterior synechiae, in both the conditions posterior synechiae are formed, but in granulomatous uveitis posterior synechiae are thick and broad base, while in non-granulomatous uveitis they are thin. Okay, fundus picture, nodular lesions may be seen in granulomatous uveitis, while nodular lesions are not seen in non-granulomatous uveitis. Okay, area in granulomatous uveitis, anterior and choroid retina are equally involved, while in non-granulomatous uveitis mainly it is limited to anterior uvea. Remember, non-granulomatous uveitis mainly involves your anterior uvea. Anterior uvea consists of your iris and ciliary body. Okay. So today we will cover anterior uveitis, and next lecture we will see intermediate uveitis and posterior uveitis. Okay. So anterior uveitis is mostly non-granulomatous type. Remember. So it is acute in onset. Patient is mostly symptomatic. Okay. But it can be chronic. Hmm? It can be unilateral or bilateral. Remember. Most of the time non-granulomatous uveitis is unilateral, while most of the times non-granulomatous uveitis is bilateral. And in 50% of cases no cause is identified and it is presumed autoimmune. Okay, so symptoms in enteritis, pain is the main symptom, redness, and this pain is due to ciliary spasm. As there is inflammation of the ciliary body and iris, there is irritation of the ciliary muscles, and because of this there is spasm, and because of this spasm there is pain, redness. Okay, as there is inflammation, there obviously there is a redness. Okay, anterociliary vessels, they are more inflamed, they are dilated, and as there is dilatation there is increased blood supply, and because of this there is redness. Photophobia is there. Okay, again a feature because of ciliary body involvement, photophobia. Okay, lacrimation is there. Okay, and diminution of vision. So all these are the symptoms. Main is pain, redness, photophobia, lacrimation. All these are the symptoms seen in anterior uveitis. Ocular sign we will see one by one. Okay, so there is congestion. It is called circumcorneal congestion or circumcorneal injection or circumcorneal flush. All these terms are same. There is congestion around the cornea, or the around the limbus, you can say. There are two types of congestion: conjunctival congestion and circumcorneal congestion. These are two different. Remember, we will see differences between these. Conjunctival congestion is seen in conjunctivitis mostly. Yeah? And in that, the congestion is maximum in the fornix, superior fornix and inferior fornix. While in circumcorneal congestion, congestion is maximum around the limbus, while it is less in the fornices. So in uveitis, circumcorneal congestion is there. Okay. In conjunctivitis, conjunctival congestion is there. Okay. So next slide is differences between conjunctival congestion and ciliary congestion, and we should be able to identify the patient based on this because it is very important. Okay, so we will see one by one difference. Site. So conjunctival injection, as I have told you, it is more marked in fornices. Okay, ciliary congestion more marked around the limbus. Okay, color, conjunctival congestion is bright red in color. Okay, ciliary congestion is slightly purple, or we see it's a dull red or dusky red in color. Hmm? Arrangement of vessel. If you see in conjunctival congestion, superficial vessels are involved, huh? And there is branching. You can see. Okay. In ciliary congestion, vessels are seen. Deep vessels are involved, and they are radiating from the limbus. On moving the conjunctiva, conjuncted in conjunctival congestion, these vessels move. Okay, while in ciliary congestion, as these vessels are involved are deeper, they do not move. Okay, on mechanically squeezing out vessels, if you see the feeling of vessel in case of conjunctival vessels, conjunctival congestion, vessel feeling is slow and it is from fornix towards limbus. Okay, and in ciliary congestion, vessel fills rapidly and from limbus to fornix. In conjunctival congestion, fornix to limbus. In ciliary congestion, limbus to fornix. Blanching, and there is one test, the blanching test. In that, what we do, we put a one drop of 1 in 1 lakh international unit adrenaline. We put a one drop adrenaline. In case of conjunctival vessels, as these vessels are superficial, there is immediate blanching. Okay, and in case of ciliary congestion, there is no blanching. As these vessels are deeper, there is no blanching. Okay, so these are the various differences between conjunctival congestion and ciliary congestion. It is very important. So conjunctival congestion is seen in conjunctivitis, while ciliary congestion is seen in uveitis, hmm, glaucoma mostly. huh? Here you can see two figure. Left side there is conjunctival congestion. On right side there is ciliary congestion. Okay. In ciliary congestion you can see a congestion maximum around the limbus, while in conjunctival congestion the congestion is maximum in the fornices, while towards the limbus there is decrease in the congestion. Okay. Next is, so we have seen symptoms, signs, symptoms, and the we are seeing signs. So corneal signs. Keratic precipitates, as I have told you, it's also very specific sign. Okay, what are KPs or keratic precipitates? These are cellular deposits on the endothelium. Hmm? Endothelium is back surface of the cornea, or the fifth layer of the cornea. So these are cellular deposits on the back surface of the cornea or the endothelium, and they may be small, medium, or large. Okay, depending upon the type of uveitis. Okay, and mostly arranged based down at the lower part of the cornea due to gravitation. So whenever we see us on the slit lamp, you should see towards the 6 o'clock or the lower part of the cornea, because of the gravity the cellular deposits are mostly accumulated in the lower part of the cornea. Okay, so there are different ways to identify whether the KPs are fresh or old. Fresh KPs are mostly round, white, and hydrated. Remember, while old KPs, they are shrunken and pigmented. Okay, fresh KPs are not pigmented, and they are round, while old KPs are they are shrunken. Okay. Another type, as I've told, in difference between granulomatous uveitis and non-granulomatous uveitis, granulomatous uveitis is characterized by mutton fat KPs. So mutton fat KPs are greasy and larger in size. They are seen in specifically in granulomatous uveitis. Hmm. So here in left side you can see a small size KPs, while on the right side you can see a large KPs. Okay, and these large KPs are like mutton fat KPs. Yes. Okay, so it is a feature of granulomatous uveitis. Okay. So entry chamber sign. Okay, aqueous cell, aqueous flare, hypopoeia, hypopia. All these conditions may be seen. So aqueous cell, these are inflammatory cells and should be counted in oblique slit lamp beam. Aqueous flare is due to aqueous cells are inflammatory cell. Aqueous flare is due to protein leakage of protein into aqueous through damaged capillaries causing Tyndall effect. Hypopoeia is pus in the antechamber. and it is classically seen in Behcet syndrome or infectious changes with infective uveitis. Hypemia, hypema, it is blood in the antechamber, and it is mostly seen in herpetic and traumatic uveitis. Okay. Depending upon the number of cells and the protein material, there are different types of grading. Okay, this is Sun classification. So if the aqueous cells are less than 5, it is grade 0 or okay. If the aqueous cells are in between 5 to 10, it is grade 1 aqueous. Okay. If the aqueous cells are between 11 to 20, it is grade 2. Between 21 to 50, it is grade 3. We call it plus 3 or plus 2. And aqueous cells more than 50 or 50, it is grade 4. Okay. Aqueous flare, again it is graded. Faint is grade 1, or we call it is just detectable. Okay. Moderate, moderate कब बोलेंगे when there is iris details are clearly seen but there is aqueous flare, it is grade 2. Marked iris details are hazy due to protein, okay, proteinaceous matter in the aqueous, it is called marked and it is grade 3. Intense when there is fibrinous exudate in the antechamber, there is formation of uh, synecdoche and there is small exudates are there, you can see it is a grade 4 flare. Okay. The iris signs that are seen in, there is change in the iris color and pattern due to edema and the waterlogging of iris in active phase and due to atrophic changes in the chronic phase. Okay. So in acute stage of uveitis, iris signs are different, while in chronic stage, iris signs are different. Hmm? Okay. In the acute stage, there is loss of pattern of the iris due to edema of the iris. Okay. And while in the chronic stage, there is atrophic changes, atrophy of the iris. In active phase, the iris is called muddy iris. And sometimes in chronic stage, you can see hyperpigmented and depigmented areas in heel stage. That is chronic stage. Iris nodules. These are specifically seen in granulomatous uveitis. Again, these iris nodules are of two types: Kopes nodules and Basaka's nodules. Kopes nodules are seen at the pupillary border of the iris, and they are smaller in size. While Basaka's nodules, they are seen away from the pupillary border near the collarette. This is a part of iris near the collarette, and these are large and few in number. Okay. Okay. Next is rubeosis iridis. Rubeosis iridis is neovascularization of iris in chronic anterioritis and Fuchs heterochromate iridocyclitis. So rubeosis iridis, this neovascularization of iris may be seen in chronic uveitis. Here you can see in upper left picture, you can see small nodules at the pupillary border. These are the Kopes nodules. While in the second upper picture, you can see small nodules. They are slightly away from the pupillary borders, and these are called Basaka's nodules. In below picture, you can see a line, that is yellowish collection in the anterior chamber, that is hypopoein, pus in the anterior chamber. Next sign is Seineke may be seen. As I have told you, Seineke may be seen in both the and granulomatous uveitis and non-granulomatous uveitis. In granulomatous uveitis, these Seineke are broad base, thick. In non-granulomatous uveitis, these Seineke are thin. What is Seineke? Is the adhesion of pupillary margin to the anterior surface of the lens due to organization of the fibrinous exudate. This is posterior Seineke. Seineke is abnormal connection of the iris, either anteriorly or posteriorly. When iris attaches posteriorly, posterior to iris is lens. So when there is adhesion between iris and the anterior surface of the lens, it is called posterior uveitis. And when there is adhesion between iris and the back surface of the cornea, it is called anterior uveitis. Okay. Pupillary signs. Okay. Pupil in acute uveitis, pupil is in meiotic stage. There is constriction of the pupil, and this constriction is due to one. It is due to edema or water lodging of the iris, and second is this irritation of the sphincter pupillae muscle, and because of this there is pupil is smaller in size and non-reacting to light. Okay, as the inflammation or the iritis uveitis advances, there is formation of synechiae. Hmm? And if you try to dilate such eye, there is irregular dilatation, and this irregular dilatation is due to there is segmental posterior synechiae. There is formation of posterior synechiae. So the part in between synechiae will dilate, while the part which is attached to posterior antesurface of the lens will not dilate. So there is festooned appearance of the pupil. Okay. Next is occlusio pupillae. It may be again seen. Occlusio pupil is occluded due to total pupil is occluded due to organization of the exudate across the entire pupillary area. Okay. So pupil in acute stage is myotic, sluggishly reacting to light or non-reacting to light. Okay. As the uveitis advances, there is formation of posterior synechiae, and if you put the mydriatic eye drops in such patient, there is dilatation of some part of the iris, and some part will not dilate, and it will give a specific appearance to the pupil, that is festoon pupil. Hmm? Sometimes in severe uveitis, whole of the uvea or the whole of the pupil will be occluded by these exudates. That is called occlusio pupillae. Here you can see there are posterior synechiae are there. Hmm? There is adhesion of iris with the anterior surface of the lens. And after dilatation, you can see some part of the iris is dilated or the pupil is dilated and some part is attached. And because of this, there is specific shape to the pupil. It is called festoon pupil. In below picture, you can see whole of the pupil is occluded by the exudates. So it is occlusio pupil. So the lens signs that are seen in uveitis, pigmentation. Okay, so pigmentation may be seen on the anterior surface of the lens. Okay, because of the inflammation, these iris pigments are shed, and this may get deposit on the anterior surface of the lens. So there is pigmentation. And another most important sign that is seen is complicated cataract. Okay, and complicated cataract, as I've told, as you know, it is characterized by polychromatic luster or crumb appearance. Complicated cataract occurs in uveitis. Why? There is interference with the nutrition of the lens, because of uveitis, and because of that, complicated cataract occurs. The signs in posterior segment in anterioritis, vitreous opacities may be seen. Okay, and due to exudates and inflammatory cells. Fundus changes, cystoid macular edema may be seen due to liberation of toxins in the chronic type. Okay, what are the complications? Most common complication of uveitis is secondary glaucoma. Remember, so other complications that may be seen are complicated cataract, secondary glaucoma, posterior synechiae, occlusio pupillae, cystoid macular edema, band-shaped keratopathy. All these are the complications. Phthisis bulbi may be seen in the advanced stages, and retinal complications, right retinal detachment may occur. Okay, they are the complications seen with anterior uveitis. Investigations. A number of investigations are advised, because etiology is varied. Infective etiology may be there, autoimmune diseases are there, collagen vascular diseases are there, a number of systemic diseases in like HLA-B27 associated diseases. In all these conditions, uveitis may be there. So a battery of investigation should be done to evaluate such patients. So basic investigation which we do are routine hemogram, serological test like VDRL, FT, ABS. All both these tests are for syphilis. Skin test like Montex test for tuberculosis, Kivium test for sarcoidosis, X-ray chest and joint, urine examination. So all these tests should be done. treatment. Okay. So aim of treating uveitis are to prevent the vision threatening complications, to relieve the patient's discomfort and pain, and to really treat the underlying cause of uveitis. Okay. So these are the aim of treating uveitis. Okay. So there are non-specific treatment which are given in all the patients. So cycloplegics. First is cycloplegics, and cycloplegics mostly they are given to relieve the pain, to relieve the ciliary spasm and pain, and to prevent the formation of synec and to break the already formed synec. Okay, so there are different types of cycloplegics. Cycloplegics means cycloplegia. Cyclo refers to ciliary body, and plegia refers to ciliary. Plegia is paralysis. So these drugs cause a paralysis of ciliary body. In uveitis, there is ciliary spasm, excessive contraction of the ciliary muscles. So we have to really relax this spasm. So these drugs do that. They paralyze the ciliary body, and as the ciliary body paralyzed, pain is relieved. Okay, pupil will be dilated, synec will not be formed, or few synec which are formed, they will break. So short-acting cycloplegics are tropicamide 0.5 or 1%, cyclopentolate 0.5 or 1%, phenylephrine 2.5 to 10%. So these are short-acting cycloplegics. Long-acting cycloplegics, atropine. Okay, subconjunctival injection can be given. All these can be given in drops or ointment form. Okay, subconjunctival injection also available. Next is steroid. This is or corticosteroid. They can be given topically as a periocular injection, intravitreal injection, or in a systemic form in the form of tablets. Okay. Topically as a drops or ointment like dexamethasone, betamethasone, prednisolone, eye drops are available. Periocular injections for of triamcinolone, uh, methylprednisolone. Okay. Intravitreal injections they are mostly given for posterior uveitis. Okay. Next is NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like aspirin, phenylbutazine. This can be tried. Okay. Immunosuppressives. In some patients who are not responsive to steroids, in such patients, immunosuppressive drugs are given. So, indications of immunosuppressive corticosteroid resistant and intolerant cases in vision threatening inflammation as a first line. Okay. And specific cases like Facet syndrome, sympathetic ophthalmitis, Wicked syndrome, in all these conditions, immunosuppressive can be given. Specific treatment for specific disease. If you identify the cause of uveitis, you can specifically treat that disease. Anti-tubercular treatment for tuberculosis, penicillin, parenteral penicillin for syphilis, sulfadiazine pyrimethamine for toxoplasmosis, tetracycline for Lyme's disease, IV ganciclovir for CMV retinitis. So specific treatment can be given if you identify the cause or the etiology, but most of the time in 50% of the cases cause is unknown, so we treat is non-specifically. So we start with the topical steroid, systemic steroid, and the cycloplegic drugs. Okay, so we have covered anterior uveitis. In next lecture we will see intermediate uveitis and the posterior uveitis. Okay, thank you.